Good evening, everybody. Let's start with our motivation. And again, remembering our fortune to have encountered the Buddha's teachings and how difficult it is to create the cause, keeping pure ethical conduct and practicing the 6 flourishing practices, making strong prayers and aspirations, and how much of our life instead is spent on the 8 worldly concerns, being concerned, worried about, preoccupied with the happiness of only this life. Especially praise and reputation and good possessions, social status, lots of sense pleasure, and how our mind so easily goes to wanting those things and not wanting their opposite, and how much time we spend really fretting about those things or worrying about them or planning how to get them. And they're all things that come and go very quickly that really don't have any long-lasting meaning or purpose. So while we have the chance to practice the Dharma, let's do it and prepare for future lives and create the causes for liberation and full awakening. So we do spend a lot of time on the 8 worldly concerns, don't we? I like this, I don't want that. How come these people called me this name? How come they don't appreciate me? How come they got this and I didn't get it? It's unfair. I should be best, everybody should love me. Nobody should say anything bad about me, even if it's true. Yeah? And how much time we spend on this and complaining when people just don't, do what we want them to do and things don't turn out the way we want them to turn out. And, complain, whine, fetch. Just, never satisfied. And then at the end of the day, we dedicate the merit. What merit? Okay. So, it's for this reason that we're studying Aryadeva's text, because he's teaching us, what is cyclic existence and what are its characteristics and why we should try and get out of it. And so we talked about how seeing impermanent things as permanent, lies behind these 8 worldly concerns. How seeing things that are by nature dukkha, unsatisfactory, we see as pleasurable. That makes a big mess. By thinking that this body, which is foul, is pure and gorgeous. Again, so much misconception. And thinking what doesn't have a self has a self. Okay, so he's really trying to teach us to recognize our own very ingrained misconceptions and wrong graspings, and then to try and counteract them by reminding ourselves again and again of how things actually are. that there is no happiness to be found in cyclic existence, no matter where we look, in the upper God realms with sense pleasure deluxe, down to the lowest realms, there's no lasting pleasure or satisfaction or fulfillment. And at the beginning, that sounds like a big letdown, because we put all our eggs in the samsara, in the basket of samsara. Yeah, and it's shocking to realize I put my eggs in the wrong basket all these years, So at first it's like, that's hard to hear. But when we, really think about it more deeply and see that realizing our error now gives us the chance to do things differently and can end up with a different result, then we see that it's actually not a bad thing to recognize our misconceptions and our mistakes, because now we can change the situation and do something different. Mm-hmm. But we have to be able to admit we're wrong. Yeah? As long as we don't like admitting we're wrong, it's going to be very difficult for the Buddha's teachings to really have any impact. Because Buddha says you're seeing impermanent things as permanent, and that's wrong. And we go, no, it isn't. I'm right. Yeah? And Buddha says, worrying about the 8 worldly concerns is a waste of time. And we go, but I want a good reputation. I want sense pleasure. And, you have all those things, Buddha. You don't know what it's like to be me, poor, deprived, unappreciated, me who everybody makes fun of. Yeah? So we think the Buddha doesn't know what he's talking about, that we're right and he's wrong. We think that everything the way things appear to us exist in the way they appear. And when the Buddha tries to say no, we say, of course. This is a telephone. It's not a grapefruit. It's a telephone. I know. Things exist the way they appear to me. Whatever I think is true. And whoever offended me is guilty and should be punished. Right? Okay. We've had this way of thinking since the beginning of this time, and we've hung on to it, and look where it's gotten us. More of the above. So I think at some level sometime we have to be able to say, I'm wrong. I need help here. Okay, so that's what Aryadeva is trying to do, is help us. So maybe we should try and help Aryadeva in his endeavors to help us, instead of constantly throwing a wrench in the works. Okay, so we just, last time we started the next section, which is how to train in the bodhisattva deeds. And that has 4 chapters in it, chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8. So, having generated engaging bodhicitta, how to actually practice the bodhisattva deeds. So we're in the first chapter of that. Okay. So the actual meaning of training in the bodhisattva deeds. So last time we talked a little bit about the greatness of the Buddha and the effects of the Buddha's activities, how his not answering 14 questions was not a sign that he didn't know what he was talking about, but a sign of his incredible sensitivity and ability to guide. We talked a little bit about the great accumulation of merit that the bodhisattvas engage in order to become a fully awakened Buddha. And then the merit of generating the first ultimate bodhicitta, the path of seeing, the first bhumi. Okay, we talked about that last week. So now we're going to talk about, on verse 107, the specific merit of causing others to generate bodhicitta. And here it's referring to the conventional bodhicitta. Okay, so here we're talking about the bodhisattva's practice, because one of the things that bodhisattvas do in order to become Buddhas is to teach others how to generate bodhicitta. Okay, and so Aryadeva says, someone may build a precious reliquary as high as the world. It is said training others to generate the altruistic intention is more excellent. Okay, so they like giving these examples. Somebody asked, how much merit is there in inspiring others to develop bodhicitta? Okay, so if merit had form, okay, or put it this way, the merit of building a stupa, or it was translated here as reliquary, but a stupa, for the Buddha's ashes, is as vast as the 3,000 great thousand world systems, and as high as the world of Ogmen in the four-men realm. I don't have the exact measurements of that, sorry, but it means big, okay? So building a stupa that big, made of the 7 precious substances, gold, lapis lazuli, and so forth, and adorned with every kind of ornament, so think about it, like the efforts it's taking to build Chenrezig Hall, and it's piddly-dink compared to a stupa that reaches from here to Ogmen in the form realm, But building that kind of stupa with all these precious things and then bringing the Buddha's ashes in there, it's going to take a lot of effort. It creates a tremendous amount of merit, but that merit is far surpassed by the merit one who trains others to develop bodhicitta creates. Okay, in other words, helping, inspiring others and teaching them how to develop bodhicitta is actually something that increases our collection of merit, our store of merit. So benefiting others also benefits us. Okay? And then verse 108 talks about the actual mode of training in the bodhisattva deeds. And here, specifically, that physical and verbal conduct, how we act physically and verbally in accomplishing others' benefit. Okay? So, Joe Blow asks a good question this time. He says, how do bodhisattvas act to benefit sentient beings? It's a good question, isn't it? He grew up from the first 4 chapters where he was really being rather dumb. And he asked a good question. Okay, so Aryadeva says, verse 108, a spiritual guide who wishes to help must be attentive towards students. They are called students because of not knowing what will benefit. Okay? So a spiritual guide who wishes to help must be attentive towards students. So this means that a spiritual mentor, and here it could refer to the Buddha, because, we're talking, or the bodhisattvas, because that's what we're talking about. So they need to understand living beings' dispositions, their tendencies, their inclinations, whether they have inferior or superior faculties. Okay? So, a bodhisattva, a spiritual mentor, wants to benefit sentient beings and create this kind of great merit by teaching them bodhicitta. Needs to be sensitive to those things. And that's something, we you know, how sensitive are we to other beings' likes and dislikes on the path, their capabilities? You know, we often see somebody and are, instead of listening to them and what they're interested in, how they see the world, we just form an idea of who they are and how they should practice. And you know, somebody steps on the Abbey property and we start giving them advice right, left, and center, you know, without kind of sussing out, well, what kind of person is this? And what are they interested in? What are they inclined to? You know, are they inclined more towards the bodhisattva practice or more towards the practice of the hearers and solitary realizers? You know? Do they understand about the 8 worldly concerns and going beyond the happiness of this life? Or is that something that, you know, they're really interested in? Yeah. Are they ready to hear certain aspects of the Dharma, or do they need a lot of preparation first? Yeah, so we need this kind of sensitivity instead of, you know, well, I like talking about XYZ subjects, so I'm going to talk to everybody about it, whether it benefits them or not, you know, and it may not, because that may not correspond to what they need to hear at a specific moment. Okay, so Bodhisattva is very sensitive to these kinds of things. And Aryadeva says they are called students because of not knowing what will benefit. So it's explained they are called students because they don't know what actions are of benefit and they need advice. Okay, so it's good to remember that. Yeah, when we're on the side of being students, to remember, oh yeah, I'm a student because I don't know what's beneficial and I need wise advice. And when you're on the side of leading the session, you know, then to think, well, they're called students because they don't know what's beneficial and they need advice. In other words, don't expect them to be Buddhas. You know, and for me, this whole thing is quite important because so often we have a lot of expectations of people who you know, have taken refuge or who are Buddhist or who have gone to Dharma class, and we expect them to be perfect and we expect them to, you know, have no doubts in their worldview, when in fact, you know, there's lots of doubts. And we expect them to put everything into practice without having to be reminded, and to do it perfectly, and to always say thank you and show appreciation and have faith in the 3 jewels. And, you know, it's very easy to have all sorts of expectations of the people. You know, even you're leading a meditation group in town, or you're you know, leading a discussion group here. You expect, well, everybody should stay on the topic. Yeah. Well, one thing that I've really learned is don't expect anything. You know? And some of you may have noticed that, you know, even kind of simple instructions about do this, and I repeat many, many times, because I've learned it's best not to expect that people remember things. Yeah? Or to assume that people understand different things. Yeah? So you repeat. You know? Okay, so to keep that in mind, and that helps us have a compassionate attitude, even when we're on the student side, compassion towards ourselves and compassion towards the other students, and when we're on the side of leading something, compassion towards the people that we're leading. Yeah, and so I think that's quite important. Yeah, to maintain that physical and verbal respectful attitude towards the other people in the group. They say an elephant is made submissive by first giving it sweets and sugar cane. The training hooks are used later. So, you know, they use the examples that fit at that time. Yeah, if you want to train an elephant, you don't start off confining it and telling it what to do and tying ropes around it. you make friends with it first and give it sweets and sugar cane, and then the elephant likes you and the elephant trusts you, and the elephant sees you're not going to harm. And then slowly you can start training the elephant, and when need be, then you use a training hook. Okay? So it's saying it's a similar kind of thing with students. You have to start off in a nice way, in a pleasant way, so that people feel comfortable. So they feel comfortable, so they feel cared for. Yeah? And so, you may notice sometimes in the Abbey that some people can do things that other people can't, and that people are trained in different kind of ways. And sometimes people may say, well, that's not fair. Yeah. It came up recently, how come some people are watching a lot of news and other people, we were told not to watch news at all, or only watch 10 minutes, 3 times a week, and then other people are watching much more news on the internet, and how come? And, that's not fair, and shouldn't we all be doing the same thing and having the same discipline? Yeah, well, we have to have some basic similar discipline, but within that, then there's got to be different things for different people, because people are doing different jobs, So if you're going to teach in town, you need to know a little bit about what's happening, because people are very likely to ask you, they're going to say, I was so upset about the verdict in the George Zimmerman case, and I'm really upset, and how do I deal with my emotions? Yeah, and people in town that's something that's could be very upsetting to them, and they ask. And if you say, what are you talking about? You're not going to be able to help them. Yeah, so if you read the news and you know a little bit, you don't need to know all the details, but you know a little bit what this is. Somebody asks you a question, and then you can respond and help them. Yeah, so somebody who is in that position of doing that needs to have knowledge of current events. But somebody who is a new monastic, they don't need to read the news at all, and it's better for them if they don't, because just a lot of namtok, a lot of preconceptions come up if they do. Okay? So that's just one example, but we have all sorts of things like that in our training, where, it's okay for one person to do something, but not for another, and that's because people have different needs and different aptitudes and so on. The same thing with eating in the evening. Some people, need to, some people don't. So, for the people who don't, when they say they do, you question them a little bit more. Like, really? You really need to eat? Why were you eating? And then other people who that it's for a reason, for their health, then, you don't need to ask that. So, it's like people need different things. So we have to keep this in mind when we're training together with other people, and also when you're guiding people. When people come to the Abbey and they say, I want to start a daily practice. Do you tell everybody to do exactly that meditation the same amount of time and the same practices? No, it's going to be different. If somebody's a beginner, then you have to see if people have meditated before. If they haven't, even if they haven't, are they somebody who has very settled energy, who can do a longer practice? Or are they somebody who's very restless, in which case maybe, you want them to do a lot of prostrations to put their physical energy in a good way? So you have to be sensitive to things like this. One of the things that I found out when, in the community when I was training, and the big thing everybody would always say is, Lama said, and so, but then it got difficult because Lama would say something different to different people. And so we'd be trying to decide, well, should we do this or should we do that? And one person said, well, Lama said do it this way. And the other person, well, no, Lama said do it that way. And then, what do you mean Lama said? Oh, he told me. I heard him with my own ears. Well, so did I. I heard him with my own ears. He said do it this way. And, well, hey, Lama told different people different things because they're different people and they need to do things differently. And what Lama said to one individual does not necessarily apply to the group. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We need to be sensitive. Yeah. We need to use our wisdom and see. But, this kind of thing, because we very much like to have a very black and white mind, don't we? It's like you do it this way and you do it that way and it's just like this. Yeah, but life is not like that, is it? Everything, there's lots of gray areas and lots of tangles and different things, and so there has to be, you have to keep a general structure, but you also have to allow for all those other things to flow within it. Okay, so that is a talent of a bodhisattva, that they have that kind of sensitivity to be able to do that they aren't just, and trying to get everybody into shape. Okay, then the next verse here is about a specific attitude that we want to have, to do the bodhisattva training. And it's about an analogy showing how to be compassionate to a recalcitrant person. Anybody here know recalcitrant people? Anybody here is a recalcitrant person?
What does it mean, recalcitrant? I don't know.
Recalcitrant, stubborn, resistant. Yeah, bullheaded. Yeah, recalcitrant. Okay, so Aryadeva says, just as a physician who is not upset with someone who rages while possessed by a demon, subduers, in other words, Buddhas, see afflictions as the enemy, not the person who has them. Okay, so if somebody who is being, we're talking ancient Indian culture here, if somebody is possessed by a demon, or in our culture, if somebody has a mental disease, and they're behaving in a very crazy way, raging and creating a fuss and everything, a wise physician is not going to get upset with that person because they know, it's the demon that's causing them to behave that way. Or it's the chemical imbalance in their brain that's causing somebody to hear voices and see things and, be paranoid or whatever. And so the physician doesn't get mad at the person, but sees the real cause and as the enemy. Okay, so similarly, the Buddhas, whenever it says subduers, it means the Buddhas because they subdue sentient beings. The subduers see the enemy, not the person who has them. So the Buddha sees the afflictions as the enemy, not the person who has the afflictions. Okay, so if there's somebody who's very stubborn, recalcitrant, won't listen to advice, just tells you to go away and stop bugging them, even though they came to you for advice, and when you give it, then they say, go away, I don't want to hear it. So even though somebody is like that, then the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas see that the afflictions are what makes that person very unruly and stubborn and out of sorts, and that it's not the fault of the person itself, it's the fault of the afflictions. Okay, and so that's, you know, like the doctor who doesn't get angry at the person who's behaving outrageously because the doctor understands it's due to that person's disease. Okay, so they give this kind of analogy a lot. You know, really don't get mad at the person, get mad at the afflictions, or separate out the person from the actions that the person does. So this applies, you know, not only when you're in the position of guiding or, you know, trying to copy bodhisattva actions, but no matter who we're with and what kind of situation we're in. You know, to not blame the other person when, you know, if they're stubborn or unruly or uncooperative or angry or filled with, you know, greed. Not to blame them, but to really see, wow, they are overwhelmed by their mental afflictions, and have compassion for the person, but really try and help them overcome their mental afflictions which are making them miserable. Yeah, and so this is really important to remember and to practice if we want to help sentient beings, because if we don't do that, then we just get so irritated and so angry with other people. You know, why are they behaving like this, and why are they do this, and on and on and on. You know, we get very upset, and of course if you're upset with somebody, how are you going to guide them on the path? Yeah, so it's important. And, you know, just even living with people, because we get to know each other quite well living in a community. And, you know, we know how, you know, who has certain afflictions, at what kind of strength, and so on and so forth. But to see that, you know, when these afflictions surface, it doesn't mean the person's bad or evil or, you know, horrible. It just means their afflictions are tormenting them. Yeah? And see the afflictions as something to do something about, you know? Not like, oh, I can't stand that person, I want to go punch him. Yeah, you know, go punch their afflictions. But how about punching your own afflictions? Yeah? How come, you know, my afflictions, oh, I'm greedy, oh, I have to go slowly, gently, don't push me, you know? But somebody else is greedy, they are always at that lunch line taking the last amount of food, you know, yeah? So, what did somebody said, what was it? Instead of looking at others' faults with a magnifying glass. No, what was it? Something with a magnifying glass and a microscope. What was it? Oh, no, a mirror. Look at our own faults with a mirror instead of looking at others' faults with a magnifying glass. Yeah? Yeah, so like that. Like that. Okay, then verse 110 is, here it's talking about stages of guiding trainees. So Aryadeva says, that for which someone has liking should first be assessed. Those who are disinclined will not be vessels for the excellent doctrine. Okay, so that for which somebody has liking should first be assessed. So a spiritual mentor should first suss out what kind of practices appeal to a certain person. You know, what kind of practices? Does this person really want to meditate more? Do they want to study more? What do they like doing Nundro practices? Would they rather do deity things? Would they rather do Lam Rim? You know, they rather do shamatha? So you have to make, you know, a proper assessment and encourage them in what they're already attracted to. Because, you know, it's easier for people to do the things they like. And at the same time, bring in things that they may not be so attracted to, but you know that it would be very beneficial for them to learn. But if you just kind of say, to somebody, you got it all wrong, you're approaching the thing completely wrong, here, start and do this, and it's not something the person's interested in, it's not going to be very helpful to them. So I remember Alex telling me once a story about our teacher Serkum Rinpoche, and Rinpoche was incredibly skillful with people, and apparently one Inji, one foreign man, who didn't know anything about Buddhism, had heard about Guru-Samaja Tantra and went to Serkum Rinpoche and said, I want to learn Guru-Samaja Tantra. Will you give me the initiation and teach me the practice? And Rinpoche, instead of throwing the guy out and saying, first, you have to meditate on precious human life, and you have to take the 5 precepts, and, you have to, things like that. He didn't throw the guy out. He said, oh, yes, of course, but, I want you to do some things first to prepare for it. Yeah. And then he got the guy going on doing, learning the basics of the Dharma. Because without learning the basics of the Dharma, that practice wasn't going to make any sense to him at all. Yeah. So he was very skillful in terms of guiding that person. And I keep remembering that because I get very impatient with people who do that. It's like, don't you realize that's a very high practice? And you need to start at the beginning. And, and Rinpoche wouldn't, say that to the person. He would say, yes, of course I'll do that. But let's first, do some things that will help you succeed in the practice. Very skillful, very patient. Okay, so first you teach the person, kind of a practice that appeals to them, and then after they learn that, then you can give them more and more instruction about other aspects of the path, because hopefully by doing that practice they'll do some purification, they'll accumulate some merit, their mind will be more receptive and more pliant, so that when you teach them something else it can go in. Yeah, so it's kind of like, when you're doing the garden, you can't just go and dig a hole and plant the seeds in. You have to do a lot of preparation in the garden first. Yeah, so it's the same with guiding somebody. Okay, so people whose minds are not prepared, who aren't inclined, even if you talk to them about the profound teachings, it could actually be very dangerous for them. If you teach about emptiness and they think emptiness means nothing exists, and then they really go to a nihilistic extreme saying that then therefore there's no good, there's no bad, everything's empty, so no matter what you do is okay. And if a person has that kind of view, then it's extremely dangerous for them. And they'll go down a wrong path. So you don't teach, those kind of teachings to somebody at the very beginning. And similarly, even just teaching people about, attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings. For some people, that idea is terrifying. It's like too much. I can't be responsible for all sentient beings. So you have to, teach them all these other things to get them prepared for that. Everybody likes to hear about kindness and love and compassion, so that we can teach anybody. Yeah, but even going into the details about what compassion really means, for some people, it's difficult. Or what love really means when you have to overcome your attachment and anger and apathy. Yeah, but you start out teaching something that people can accept. Yeah, so people often ask me after they've come to a course and they say, I really like Buddhism, and how can I tell my family about it? What do I talk about? And I always say, don't go home and say, hey, Mom, Dad, there's Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Karma, Samsara, Nirvana. Mom and Dad are going to go, woohoo, happened to my kid? Yeah, but if you go home and you say, oh, they talked all about, having forgiveness and love for other people and how to create compassion. And Dalai Lama said, my religion is kindness. And then the parents go, oh, that sounds good, They taught us good ethical values, the same thing you taught us, Mom and Dad. Don't lie and don't, steal. And so, the same kind of things you taught. Then Mom and Dad go, oh, okay, that's good, nothing to be afraid of. But if you go in and you start talking about, where there's 6 realms of existence, and, at the time of death you go through the bardo and you see this and that and the other thing, and, Mom and Dad are going to get a little nervous there. Okay? Okay, so, it's really a lot of skill. So people who are miserly, for example, they're not going to like to hear a teaching about generosity. Yeah, and the people who are angry, yeah. So depending, some people on angry, they want to hear a teaching on patience or on fortitude. Other people don't want to. They want to hear a teaching on how to get revenge, which you're not going to teach. So people who have very loose ethical values, who aren't interested in restraining their impulses, they're not going to want to hear a teaching on ethical conduct. Okay? So what we have to do in those cases is first talk about what benefits somebody could get. Like if somebody's very miserly, okay, instead of directly teaching them about generosity, you would start saying, oh, well, the Buddha taught a way to create the cause to have wealth in the future. And that miserly person goes, oh, really? The Buddha taught a way to have wealth in the future, and they're interested, because it's a goal. And you say, yeah, and you start out by giving things now. Just give small things, just practice small generosity in your life, and then slowly you encourage the person to increase it. You teach them about how to create a motivation when they're giving and all sorts of things like that. Yeah, so first you create the interest and tell them the benefit, and then you introduce the practice. Okay? Or, if you're with an angry person, then you say, oh, the Buddha taught all these ways that are so good for calming ourselves, and for helping us so that we don't say things that then make a mess in our relationships. And then the person goes, oh, well, maybe I should hear a little bit about that, and then that opens the door and you can teach them about that topic, okay? Okay, so, yeah, or the one about patience, also, you can say, well, the Buddha taught a method for creating the cause to have a very attractive appearance in a future life. Oh, attractive appearance, I want that. Then you teach them patience. Yeah? Because patience creates the cause for that. Okay, next verse is about being particularly compassionate towards those with very strong afflictions. So Aryadeva says, just as a mother is especially anxious about a sick child, bodhisattvas are especially compassionate towards the unwise. Okay, so a mother, if they have several children, and one of them is sick, they're going to, give more attention to the one who is sick and really care for that one that's sick. And so too, bodhisattvas are going to be especially compassionate towards people who lack wisdom, who don't know how to make good decisions, who get themselves in a lot of jams. Yeah. So So bodhisattvas, even if somebody, despite having, there's somebody out there, and despite the bodhisattvas having explained, don't do this, and having stopped the person from doing some kind of negative action, even 100 or 1,000 times, when that person again starts to do the action, the bodhisattvas, have special compassion for that person. Yeah, and see the person is kind of like when you have a puppy and you give your puppy a bath, and then what's the first thing it does?
Rolls outside of it.
It goes outside and rolls in the mud. Yeah? So bodhisattvas, when they're guiding sentient beings and they teach them something, and then the person goes and does the exact opposite, then instead of getting discouraged, instead of getting fed up, instead of getting angry, they have special compassion for that person who's really like the puppy. Yeah. I heard one story of some Zen master long time ago, and there was one disciple in the monastery who was just behaving outrageously and really disturbing everything. And the rest of the disciples came to the master and said, please, master, ask this guy to leave because he's just creating havoc. And the master said, this disciple is very unwise. He doesn't know how to make good decisions. He needs to be here. But the rest of you are more mature in your practice. And if you can't stand being with him, you'll do better going. Gulp, okay. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, being especially kind towards people who are unwise. Yeah, so it gives us some idea of the kind of patience and fortitude that bodhisattvas cultivate. And I know very often, in my life, I come up against all sorts of situations with other people that are so difficult or they're frustrating. It's like, I've been trying to guide this person to do this, and they're doing the exact opposite. And I can see exactly what a mess this is going to become. And, the person just, they don't want to hear anything. Yeah, and so there's the real temptation to just go, and then I think two things. One is, well, the bodhisattvas haven't given up on me. So I've created plenty of cause for them to give up on me. They haven't, so I shouldn't give up on others. Yeah, and this difficult situation is just a tiny similarity to something I'm going to have to deal with when I'm a bodhisattva. In other words, bodhisattvas have to deal with disciples and people doing really outrageous things. What this person is doing is some tiny thing. So this is my opportunity to develop my patience because I admire the bodhisattva deeds. I admire bodhisattvas. I want to be one. But admiring isn't going to make me one. I have to cultivate the qualities they have. So, and they need to have so much fortitude, so much endurance. So if I want to have that kind of endurance, then I have to start practicing with these small things that happen here right now. Yeah, instead of just throwing up my arms and saying, this is just too much. Yeah, it's like, no, this is my opportunity where I need to practice, because if I can't practice with small frustrations like this, how am I going to do what a bodhisattva has to do? And I want to be able to do what a bodhisattva does. So, if it means, and I do this often for not only when there's problems with people, but even if, I'm in a situation that's very physically uncomfortable. Yeah. than to just say, okay, I just have to learn to endure this because it's going to be, I'm going to have this 100 times stronger, when I'm a bodhisattva. So I just have to learn to bear this kind of difficulty. Yeah. Yeah, like for example, when you're sitting on the stage when His Holiness is teaching and they have these kind of lights and they're just bearing down on you and you're sweating and you're getting a headache and it's just like, can't they turn those spotlights off? And then I think of His Holiness and they're even stronger where He is. Yeah, but he gets to wear a visor. But thank goodness, I'm glad he does. Yeah, but it's like, okay, I have to learn to go through some kind of physical difficulties because it's not always going to be easy and comfortable to, in any particular situation. So I have to learn to deal with some discomfort. Mm-hmm. Okay, then the next verse is about how to act for others' welfare according to their capabilities and their inclinations. So this is what a bodhisattva does. So verse 112, they become students of some and become teachers of others, making beings who do not understand through skillful means and knowledge. Okay, so since people's dispositions and interests and capabilities and so on vary a lot, a bodhisattva acts in different ways according to, the thing that person needs. So they teach some people by becoming that person's students. Yeah. And then they teach other people by becoming their teachers. And they teach other people by becoming their friends. Okay? So they teach those who are inferior by pointing out their good qualities. They teach those who are arrogant by, somehow taming their arrogance, but at the same time encouraging their self-confidence. Okay, so they're like a doctor who's going to prescribe different medicine to different sentient beings to make them healthy. When you go to the doctor doesn't give one medicine to everybody. So in the same way, here's this thing of diversity, and a teacher is going to give, different people different practices and say different things to different people. Yeah, because the ultimate purpose of the doctor is to make everybody healthy, but they have to give the medicine for that person. And in the same way, a bodhisattva or a dharma teacher wants to lead everybody along the path to liberation and awakening, but people need to do different things at different times. Yeah, so they will give different instructions. Okay, so bodhisattvas use many skillful means to help people understand suchness, emptiness. And so that's why they say, in some sutras, the Buddha taught that there is a self, and in other, because that's what he had to do to benefit that particular audience. In some sutras, he taught that, there's no self-sufficient, substantially existent person, but there are truly existent phenomena and aggregates. In some, he taught that there's, this foundation consciousness that carries the karma. To others, he taught all sorts of different views according to what those sentient beings needed at that particular time. Yeah, and so bodhisattvas could even appear as leaders of other religions. Now, for the people who a belief in a creator God is helpful and helps them to create good karma, then a bodhisattva could appear as somebody who teaches about God and encourages people to be ethical by saying, this will please God. Yeah. So it means that we really have to be quite open-minded and realize that different people are going to be attracted to different things. So we have to be flexible and not be, totally rigid in our approach. And this is also why they say that bodhisattvas have to learn so many different things, because if you're going to help sentient beings, you have to know all these different practices and methods and so on to be able to teach the people who, that's the best thing for them to hear. That doesn't mean that as a newbie in the Dharma, we go out and try and learn everything at once, because we'll get confused. Yeah, we need to kind of stay and practice a path in a gradual way. And when we have some deep foundation, then we can explore and learn all sorts of different things. Yeah, but if the beginning we start out, one day practicing this, next day practice that, and think, oh, I'm creating the cause to be a bodhisattva, learning all these different practices. But what's actually happening is we're not even a jack of all trades and master of one, and we're not a master of one, and we're not even a jack of all trades, because we're bouncing around too much. Okay, so there's different things for different people, and I've seen this sometimes with my teachers, how. I used to be just so jealous of the people who got to hang around my teachers, and I was never able to be one of those people who, hung around all the time and did errands and gave them tea, and, all these other people were. And some of the people that, hung around my teachers were very difficult. And I was like, how come I can't do it? And then one day I remember Lama was saying, sometimes the teachers keep, as the people nearest to them, the people who are the biggest disasters. Yeah. What?
Here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, because he said, those people need the most help and the most direct guidance. And the people who don't need that so much, the teachers don't necessarily keep those people around as, so close. So that was a little bit consoling, even though I was still very jealous. Yeah, but it was actually quite helpful for me to think of that. And their kindness in how they really took care of some people that I just thought were like unbelievably off the wall. And, how kind they were to some of those people. Yeah, and those people obviously had some karmic connection, and they had some faith. There was something there. They were there, not, just out of accident. There was some karmic connection. And, my teachers were just extremely compassionate to them. Yeah. Not like me, who got so irritated. Any questions or comments?
Just seeing from these verses how so much patience is involved instead of this Western mind, quick fix, get it all tidied up and all fixed right now.
Yeah.
And that's not this.
No. Yeah. We want to solve everybody's problems, get them doing what they're supposed to be doing, go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And this is really about a lot of patience and gentleness and skill.
And getting yourself out of the way, too.
Yeah.
It can't be much about you.
No, it can't be about you at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if it's about you, it's not benefiting them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard somebody say something like when you start seeing your students' faults, as good quality, something. It was something to the effect of when the students start mimicking the teacher's bad qualities, thinking that they're good qualities, and you start, encouraging people in your bad qualities because you too think that they're good qualities. Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah. So I mean, it really has to do with getting yourself out of the way, and and with having a pure motivation. Yeah. I mean, if you're wanting to have a great following and get a lot of offerings and have a big reputation, you might get all of that, but how much people benefit in the process, that remains to be seen.
That's what I'm coming back to, what do you really want? Do you want to practice the Dharma or not? So when you get distracted by all these other things, even I remember one case when you give an advice to somebody who came here as a guest, how to deal with jealousy towards other students of my teacher. You said, why did you come to the Dharma? Do you want to be close because you want to feed your outwardly concerns, or do you want to learn the Dharma really? So I like to use these difficult situations to really practice.
Yeah. And kind of gently reminding people of what their motivation is. Yeah, not clobbering them with it. Other question? Yeah.
I've got kind of like a technical question about the meaning of merit, which when we use these analogies, if the merit of doing some action had physical form, then it would be greater than this other thing.
Right.
So because merit is synonymous with virtue, and virtue is karma, which is action, and then the prasangika madhyamaka, the actions of body and speech are considered physical form or form, then it seems like merit does have physical form. So when we use the word merit, is there actually implied that we're referring to the results of the merit?
No. It's referring, merit doesn't have physical form. When they say that actions of body and speech have physical form, they mean at that very moment that you're doing it.
Right.
Yeah, because your body is in a certain position. Yeah, but of course when you stop doing it, you still have the karma, the karmic seed from it. And that karmic seed doesn't have physical form. Yeah. Merit is basically good karma. Yeah. Should I do one more verse? Actually, it's 7:02. Maybe we should stop. Any more? Anything?
Just an appreciation also for the patience aspects. I was looking in my notebooks because I was looking for a teaching from 2009, and I came up with a notebook from 1997, which I opened up, and there, like in big letters across the top, it says, if you're having difficulties with somebody, look at your own mind. And I thought, oh my God, she's been saying this to me for over and over. So I don't know, just in listening to these, also recognizing that just what you said, that we don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, I had that yeah. I had that experience too one time, picking up something from one of my teachers at transcription, and it's just like, oh, this is the same thing, and why are they saying the same thing? Because I still haven't gotten it. Yeah. So.
I think also it needs a lot of courage. When I think about situations when people maybe don't look for advice and they are caught up in these situations, that people don't do things right maybe, but you want to support the Dharma, let's say in these circumstances, and you're in the middle of maybe people who really not working in the right path, and you don't know, you're totally confused, you get angry and totally caught up with your emotions, and then how to pull you out when when you don't have this hook kind of to the bodhisattva path. It's very difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, I mean, that's why creating that karmic link with the Dharma is so important, and why cultivating faith and confidence in the three jewels is important, so that, our mind is inclined to listen to the advice and the teachings. Yeah, because otherwise you see many people come to teachings and just say, oh, this is a bunch of hogwash, because there isn't the receptivity in their own minds, and then it's very difficult for them to pull themselves out of all that confusion. Okay. So let's try and make ourselves into people who are open, receptive vessels for the bodhisattva path, and to lead others to do the same.